Hello, everyone, and welcome to Emerge by Design. I am Brandy,
And I am Richard.
and we are here to talk about the third quarter moon this week. As every week, we come and we talk about the cycle or the chapter that is affecting us in our emotional bodies each month. And every week, we kind of turn a page in the story. And this week is the third quarter moon.
Yeah, taking place on Saturday, July 27th, specifically at 8:52 p.m. Mountain Time. But yeah, when we think of the third quarter moon, tonight she will be half illuminated in the sky, the last week of this lunar cycle. And the reason we do this is each quarter we look at the symbolism and the thematics in the chart to gain support, clarity, and our emotional lunar cycle.
In our world, to understand, to give language to what's going on the inside. You know, we are not necessarily, have not been taught these kinds of words and languages to be able to put words to our feelings. And so this is a great opportunity to do that here.
Yeah. So before we jump into the chart for the third quarter moon, we would like to back up and let's look at the new moon, which was in Cancer on July 5th. And let's take a look at what the message was at the time of the new moon. I love new moons. It is the beginning of the cycle. The moon is dark in the night sky, but on the opposite side of the moon, she is fully illuminated with the sun's life force energy.
Just getting all the neutrinos, everything to herself.
Yeah, I always think of it like a private conversation that she's having. And it's like a download. It's just a unique moment in time where she is having that conversation.
And then she turns around in phases to give us that little bit, that little bit, that little bit of that conversation.
Yeah. So as we look at the chart for the Cancer new moon, the sun was in gate 39, which puts the earth in its polarity in gate 38, and the moon is lined up with the sun. So she was also in gate 39, line 6. So we're just going to pull out a few of the aspects we were talking about, again, to kind of get the thematic. But to start with, it was in Cancer. And not only Cancer, right in the middle of Cancer at 14 degrees. And when we think about Cancer, this is the home sign of the moon. So this is a very powerful lunation of the year simply because of that. We typically get one Cancer new moon each year. We know because it's her home turf, it's powerful in that sense. When we think of Cancer, we're thinking of our inner world, inner security, home, family, things that are very near and dear to us.
And in her story, in her hero's journey, she was in gate 39 and gate 38 as the polarities. This is the, struggle and perseverance. There was some aspects in the design last week or at the new moon that could have been seen as scratchy or challenging in some sense of the word. Some of the archetypes that were present at that time were ones that demand something or another.
There's several things that have made this lunation very sensitive. Not only being Cancer, but you're also touching on those two individual gates in the root center, pressure gates. And while we're talking about those two, we might as well pull in the fact that Pluto was in gate 60. So there are 3 individual gates of pressure in the root center, and they were all activated at this new moon. So that definitely gives us a sense of how somewhat provoking and sensitive and personal. Anytime we're talking individual circuitry, we're talking about the deepest inner core of who we are individually. Who am I? What is my truth? What is my purpose? Where is my emotional spirit? Deeply personal topics.
Very personal. And then there was a lot of throat gates activated as well. And so there was an opportunity, on both sides of the spectrum, an opportunity for us to speak out of turn and an opportunity for us to speak deeper truth. And I believe that was part of, that's every month's message, but this month it was very much about the Cancerian truth, which is the most inner.
And layered on to that was the sensitivity of Venus being conjunct the new moon, bringing her qualities of love and beauty and harmony. I always think of Venus as what we want in life. Mars may be how we tend to go get it. Venus is what we want. And Venus was conjunct the new moon, bringing her into an elevated priority in this storyline. But Venus was also squaring Chiron, the wounded healer. And that's where I really was sensing that extra sensitivity, that these wounds from our past maybe being brought to light, provoked in 39, being brought to the surface again this month. So it had that sense to it where even little pokes to our inner security, our inner, this Cancerian feeling, may have felt louder than they normally would have.
Yes, right? And it was in gate 42. So the opportunity to mature and to bring it to a new understanding, to allow that pressure, that provocation, to have you see something new and have the energy to move it forward in a different way or not, right? Yeah. We had the opportunity to stay in our cycles and to just be stuck and anchor in our victim mentality. We had that opportunity too, but I think that it was a beautiful conversation as she turned around to say, all right, guys, here's what the sun just said. Yeah. We got some work to do. And so we've been doing it.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, Chiron was in the gate 42. Chiron doesn't get an activation on the chart you're looking at, but he is in gate 42. This idea of growth and evolution and development in regards to these painful experiences possibly from the past. But Venus herself was in gate 62. Part of our logical expression of the detail. So again, we could sense from the square this dynamic energy of growth and development, sharing the details about that story from our past. Also, in logical circuitry, we had the channel of the wavelength, a design of talent. So again, we can sense this evolving, refining, coming up with a new story, which is very much part of this overall cycle, which we'll get to even more when we get to the full moon chart. But that was, I think, a pretty good description of the essence of that new moon, that we were in for a bit of an emotional ride, but so important to our personal evolution of this idea of what is my truth.
Absolutely.
How have limitations, gate 60, been holding me back?
That's
and how do I accept, surrender, mutate, and transform into this greater outer expression of my inner truth?
Beautiful discussion or journal question.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we'll take a look at the, let's take a look 2 weeks later when we had the Capricorn full moon on July 21st. And go ahead.
This is when we talked about the opportunity to really accept the limitation and tell the story in a new way. This had some gates of influence and individuality in the now and emotional truth, and 56, the ability to access a way to say it in the best way to be understood without confusion or distraction.
And I think part of the story you're sharing there, as we look at the astrological chart, is the fact that the sun was at the very end of Cancer in the 29th degree, but the moon being in the 29th degree of Capricorn at the full moon, which is the ruled by Saturn. It's associated with the 10th house. So we're thinking of a very outward expression, often associated with our vocation or how we shine out into the world. So we move from the new moon, this very soft inner world that we have, and how we're going through inner development of healing and acceptance, moving into this full moon, which is how do we now have that outer expression of truth. And when I say truth, I'm also thinking about how that full moon was very tightly conjunct to Pluto.
That's right. And gate 60.
And he is the planet of death, rebirth, transformation, and truth.
Yeah, bringing what you have put in the shadow to the light, bringing those shadows over and over again, that dark night of the soul that comes over us, bringing that to the surface and being able to tell a new story about it.
And there were some very interesting aspects that were happening as well. So if we look at Mars had just entered the sign of Gemini, and at the time of the full moon had entered gate 20, the gate of the now, which again is an individual expression of possible truth, was in a trine to the moon conjunct Pluto. So we're getting a sense of this Martian energy really connected to, we're really tying together gate 20 and gate 60.
Right.
What has the... Yeah, go ahead. That stimulates you right there.
Yeah, it did stimulate me actually, because they're such two potent and powerful, and this is the truth of me now. and now lightning struck and it's different, and now lightning struck and it's different again.
Yeah.
And the ability to have the nervous system regulation to withstand, not just to withstand, but see what love sees through all of that. That is very stimulating. I believe 20 is the expression of me now and now and now and now. And 60 is the acceptance that it's always going to be changing depending on what's happening around us.
Yes. Yeah. Beautifully shared. Now, also tied into that connection between Mars and the moon, Pluto, trine, at the apex of the triangle we can see in the chart, the blue triangle, we can see that Neptune was also at 29 degrees of Pisces, forming a sextile to moon and Pluto on one side and a sextile to Mars on the other. So all of a sudden we're seeing this, again, elevated priority of Neptune, which is in gate 25, the gate of the spirit of the higher self, and part of the channel of initiation.
And the love of everything that exists. And the ability to see what love sees in the midst of it all. And I know in the current climate that we are living in, that it is getting increasingly more challenging to stay regulated, to remember that all that is within, and to move forward with love and an open heart and to see what love sees. And this is a beautiful opportunity, I think, to fall into the mysticness of Neptune's command.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
To see what love sees.
Yeah, and to maintain that innocence, right? So if we're talking about Chiron and these wounds from the past and possible triggers that may have happened during this month, to recognize that these are invitations for us to go inward, right? To find that sense of healing, because to be innocent and have universal love requires that nothing can hurt us in that sense. It's like if we've done our healing, words...
Innocence sounds like a very meek and mild and tender thing, but actually it's as strong as water.
Oh, yeah.
You know, innocence protects you. The selfness protects you, if anything thinks it needs protection, from whatever has ill aims. Innocence is the thing that allows the divine to be expressed through us. And so loving all that is what we need to do in order to love all that is here and be all that is. I think that's
really beautiful. And as you're sharing all that, I'm looking back at the moon in gate 60, line 3, along with the sun in gate 56. So again, I think it really is part of that inner development story this month. I'm very emotional and sensitive to overcome these limitations, but how that gate 56, the gate of stimulation, how our stories have the ability to evolve.
And to impact our bodies through that evolution. You know, the health and wellness of our bodies is dictated by the stories we tell about it. And so when we can learn to tell new stories, our bodies then can handle more voltage, more bandwidth, more health.
Absolutely, it can. And I think listening to our stories this month could have been very supportive. We have such a repetitive neural pathways where we repeat our misgivings about experiences from the past, people that hurt us or whatever the story is. This is a true opportunity to have that inner individual mutation to actually have a new story.
Right. And the new story doesn't have to be something that's you know, we don't have to take that person wronging us or that story that we tell that doesn't feel empowering. We don't have to forget it or dismiss it or push it down. We get to take out the gems. I think that's what Pluto is offering.
Great point.
We get to take out what is the most true, that feels the most empowering, and just tell that story, because what we focus on expands. And so let's focus on the parts of the story that made us feel expansive so that we can hold more.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Really appreciate you bringing up that aspect of Mars being conjunct the full moon, because that is part of what Pluto does as an archetype. It's not always an easy aspect or frequency when we're talking Pluto. It can be very challenging because Pluto is here to strip away facades, to strip away mental, projected, ego-driven things into this real varnished sense of higher self truth. Yeah. And it uncovers hidden gems as you're sharing. And hopefully that was what came about for folks this month. Is that something new was discovered that helped brought that, not only the acceptance of the limitation, but the strength to overcome and heal, to mutate into this new stimulating story about empowerment of our story.
Right. And so maybe a good discussion question or exercise could be to write one of your stories that feels the most disempowering. Write it out as a stream of consciousness, and then read it back and see what those gems are, and tell a story based on that.
Yeah.
Those gems, and see if you can rewire some of the beliefs that you hold about yourself.
And then just to throw in one more aspect, there were so many things happening in the astrological wheel with the aspect, but Jupiter was also very closely aspecting Venus in a sextile. And Jupiter at the time was in gate 35, which is it's called the gate of progress. How has this experience brought some degree of progress in our life? And there was a lot of support with that sextile.
Yeah. I think that's
pretty good for our full moon. Okay, which brings us up to the third quarter moon.
And here we are.
Yeah. Now we can see in the astrological wheel, there's not a lot of aspects. As you can see, they're pretty faded in the background. So not a lot of really strong aspects at the moment of the third quarter moon, except for the moon being square the sun, which is always why this is such an important time. We have that dynamic energy of growth and development in the offering.
Right, in the offering. And it made both of us smile when we saw this chart, because it felt as if I think in pictures, having inner vision. And so the picture that came is just, we have this opportunity, at the new moon, it was very sharp and commanding. And we have this opportunity now to just kind of float in the what is, and the opportunity, the keynotes, as I was writing them down, everything has a spectrum. So nothing's bad or good, but the opportunity for some of these words: acceptance, universal love, contribution, grace, collaboration, acceptance, wisdom, the bodhisattva, shyness, connection, nurturing, anticipation, influence. Like, these words just felt like they're not going to impose themselves on you, but they're available for the offering if you are brave enough to move from that floaty space, from the sharpness we were just in, into now more a true expression and grounded piece of who you are.
Thank you for sharing those. She was reading all of the keynotes for the 13 planetary activations that we're looking at.
Right.
And at the third quarter moon, in general, but specifically the conversation we're in here, but this third quarter moon is always a time, in a sense, to shed old things, to let things go that are not serving, to incorporate the experiences we did go through so far this month, these deep, stimulating, chironic, plutonic, emotional feelings, to now, how do we integrate that? How do we move into that gate 56 in the full moon into the third quarter moon? Is how are we sharing this in this outer expression, in that sense? So we can see that the sun is in gate 31, right, has moved into Leo, the gate of influence, and how we are. It's line 4.
So it's about perception. How you perceive you is how others perceive you. And that is the measure of your influence, I believe.
Yeah. And being in line 4, we were talking about the Capricorn full moon being an outward expression with others. And here we have a line 4 for the third quarter moon. So that idea of externalizing and sharing and supporting others with this new story of inner truth that we may have discovered. And when we look at the moon herself, she's in 27, line 4.
It makes me smile. I love this. I love this energy. This energy is about nurturing of self, and this in the fourth line to me feels, when I nurture myself, when I love myself, the message just keeps coming around to love of self, love of self, love of self, love of self, because then everything else falls in place after that. Every ripple that is touched is one of love. And that 27 in the fourth line is me loving me, in turn creates collective love, connective love.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. And so as you're sharing, gate 27, so that self-nourishing is so vital right now, particularly again after it was a powerful cycle, as we've been trying to indicate. And if you have felt that, to just appreciate, to find that deeper sense of self-love, and again, Cancerian new moon, this enhanced sense of inner security.
Right? And what I think that could look like is indulging in your victim story just so that you can hear the frequency of it, nurturing it, holding it like a mother would hold a child that is telling an untrue story, and holding it in this way and being able to allow it to express itself and offering it a different perspective.
Great time to do that as well, because that Mars, which has been traveling through gate 20 all week, is in line 6.
Which is wisdom, which is the ability to express the wisdom of my nowness, my being in the now. So there's support. And these, like I said, these energies don't feel imposing. They're not, the sacral, the 59 and the 27 maybe are a bit imposing, but the other ones, they just feel like they're available for the taking. So it's an invitation. I think that the universe is continually inviting us into co-creation with it, into participating as a dancer with it. And I think that 20 in the 6th line is inviting that ability to see what happens when you express the wisdom of you now.
Beautiful, beautiful. Anything else you'd like to point out on this chart for the third quarter? I think the offering I wanted to share is that, so we have one more week until the next new moon.
We do.
And so the last week of every lunar cycle is very supportive of doing these self-nourishing, taking time to reflect, doing some journaling, some deep inner introspection. I think we're going to have a new moon in Leo in a week.
Yes.
And that'll be a whole different story.
That we'll
be in fixed fire, and the home sign of the sun himself in that way. So to really, this has been a deeply personal, inner emotional cycle. So to really hug ourselves.
And you have the tools to allow yourself to be in the cycle as the witness. This is what it feels like. These tools are here, this acceptance over and over again, this grace and connection and nurturing and anticipation. All of these words to me are the offering to stand in our power, to allow the nurturing of the story to be seen, and to really, without getting lost in it. Sometimes we don't want to feel our emotions because we're afraid they're going to suck us up like a black hole. But what I'm trying to say here and what I'm trying to offer is that it looks like the scaffolding is here to make sure no black holes suck us in, and to be able to equip us with the knowing of the new story. So that we don't get lost in the past by telling these stories. So to have faith that the retelling of this story is going to allow you to see the higher version of it.
And everything you're so beautifully sharing, I'm also feeling that deeper connection with our personal authority. You called it power, voice of truth, our inner guidance system. Really a Cancerian cycle we've been in to deepen our connection with that process, whether it's an inner authority or a process authority. This is really a wonderful time to deepen our roots into that personal felt sense of connection.
Beautiful.
Okay.
That was a good one.
All right.
Thanks for being here, guys.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
And we'll see you next week. I would love to offer or to invite you to subscribe, to go to Emerge by Design and see what we're up to. We have some really cool events going on this summer. We'll be in Colorado Springs. We'll be in right outside of Seattle. We will be in Santa Fe, all facilitating astrological workshops, 9-centered relating talks. We're going to be doing breath work and a full immersion with a Living Your Design certificate. So we have a lot going on, and we'd love to invite you into all of it.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for being here.
Okay.